The following podcast contains coarse language and adult themes. This week on the show, flashback to 2009 as Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons' magnum opus finally makes it to the silver screen thanks to a little-known CrossFit-doing music video director. It's super slow-mo, apocalyptic superhero shit with a massive blue dick flying around, and I do mean that literally. That's right, we're talking Watchmen. I'm Regs. That's a werewolf, and this is the Film Addicts podcast. Hey folks, and welcome back to the Film Addicts podcast. I'm here with my good friend, the werewolf. What's going on, the werewolf?
Just eating shit.
Just eating shit? Fantastic. That's what I like to hear from my werewolves, my lycanthropy folk. We're here. We're doing it. We're talking Watchmen, not the TV show, and which is great. We might touch on a little bit, but we're going to talk about the movie from 2009, a Zack Snyder joint, which he did immediately after 300. I haven't watched that movie in a long time. I'm told it doesn't age well, but then again, neither do human beings, so fuck it. It's true. We get all wrinkly and grey. But before we get into any of that business, how are you, sir? What's going on with you?
I'm doing okay. I'm just eating a lot of people.
Okay, you went back to your normal voice, and I wasn't sure if we were still doing the bit, but we're still doing it. We're still doing it.
I'm just eating a lot of people.
Dangerously close to Blood Axe, mate, but whatever. That's totally fine.
What?
Sound like Tim the Toolman Taylor for anybody out there who's over the age of 30. But you're well?
I'm well. Multiplied by 3.
Multiplied by 3, the best time.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm busy. Started a new big editing contract, so I'm feeling creatively jazzed. I had a great shoot on the weekend. I've got another awesome shoot coming up next week, or 2 next week. I'm feeling good. I've got a pretty polished second draft of this screenplay that I'm working on with a producer, and we're going to try and get some funding for that stuff and all that good shit that I like to do, that everybody knows that I like to do. But what I really like to do when we're here in this space is talk about movies with my good friend Addie. And in order to be able to do that, to get to where we need to get to, we've got to do our segments. And one of our segments is, what are we
watching?
That's right, we're going to sing it from now on, and fuck you. Not fuck you. Thanks for coming along. So what are we watching? Addie, what are you watching at the moment? What's been going on for you? Because I've been busy as shit.
I watched Guardians last night.
It's the third one?
Yep.
Just give me a because we're going to do an episode on it in a couple of weeks' time with perhaps a little surprise involved. James Gunn's not coming on or anything. But then again, I mean, James, if you're listening...
Yeah, I mean,
drop us a line.
If anyone in fucking Hollywood would listen to this shit, it's James Gunn.
Yeah. I think if we're if we're talking about target audiences as far as big time Hollywood directors go, Marty Scorsese's a bit busy to listen to this shit. But we're going to do an episode on. Give me like a couple of sentence. How is it?
If you're an animal lover, go get fucking stack of dishes before you go and watch this movie.
Oh, terrific! He says to the fucking vegan.
But yeah, it was. It gave me a connection to the MCU that I felt like it was lacking in the entirety of Phase 4.
Yeah, I think a lot of people feel that way, yeah.
Which is probably because I've known these characters and grew up with them, and it's a bittersweet kind of movie, but it's also like, it's a cool classic space adventure. Guardians style.
Yeah.
And it's...
yeah.
Go on.
Sorry, no, you go.
I was just saying that it's so much better of an adventure film than fucking Quantum Mania and Thor: Love and Thunder.
Yeah, I mean, let's not mince words here. We're not a negative podcast. We're a almost irritatingly positive podcast, to be perfectly honest. That's the words that have been used to describe it. Anyway, not any reviews or anything, but just some people come to this stuff for actual what do you call it? Sort of film criticism, but I don't think we do that very well. But I will say Phase 4, or whatever phase this is this Phase 4 or 5?
This is 5. We started 5 with Quantumania.
5, okay, so start of 5 and most of 4, pretty disjointed to say the least. Maybe we're curbing it in, I don't know. But I mean, the Guardians have always felt a little bit outside of all of that because they were so contained. I mean, I know that they did play a fairly sizable role, particularly in Infinity War, but there is an autonomy that they had because James Gunn is probably the only really significantly stylistic director that they have, and we'll get into stylistic directors when we talk more about Zack, but this feels like a lot of slow-mo, but this feels like the end of something, whereas Quantumania certainly didn't seem like the end of something. It seemed like the start of a whole bunch of shit. So but yeah, like we'll talk about it at length when we get to it. Anything else you've been watching?
Watched the Super Mario Brothers movie, which is cute. Oh, they use like early 2000s, late 90s songs, and I was fucking jamming.
Yeah, man.
That's
the target, because the people who are going to go and see this movie are either the people my age who used to play Super Mario Brothers and have kids, or they're people like your age who were kids when like the original sort of Mario Island or whatever it's called, like when there were the newer generations of Nintendo consoles or whatever started to come out. Did you play much Mario Brothers back in the day?
Not really. I was more of a Tetris and the Pac-Man kind of person. And
yeah, fair enough.
And Mortal Kombat, because
you have to scream it when you say Mortal. You can't just say Mortal Kombat. You've got to go Mortal Kombat. Ding 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 ding. Woo! I can't believe that was a song. Like, how many movies shout their name at the intro? Like, it literally in that movie, that fucking fantastically stupid movie, they shout it. At the beginning of the title hasn't even come up. It's the fucking logo of the company. And it's just this dude shouting. And that band, The Immortals, they never have to write another song in their life. They're all good with just that one. Wow, we're remarkably off the track. Was Mario Brothers good, is the question?
Yes, it was good. If you want a fun time, go watch it. Although it's going to be like... It's made $1 billion. It might stay in theaters for like a couple of weeks more. So, yeah.
I'd say so.
Yeah. But yeah, Guardians was good. Mario Brothers was surprisingly good. I did watch Renfield, though.
Okay. That is the Jack Nicholson. Nick Jackelson. Yep.
Yep.
Nicolas Cage and Nicholas Hoult.
Yep.
2 Nicholases. No waiting. How is it?
And Aquafina, by the way. Isn't that one as well?
Oh, okay. I didn't know she was in that. Yeah, I haven't seen it, obviously.
Yeah, it's great. It's gore, and it's Nicolas Cage as Dracula. What the fuck else do you want?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people have been waiting for that shit. And the dude is, wow, he's just a spectacular oddity, isn't he?
He is.
Yeah, that's Holly weird for you. Even though I don't like that phrase. Anything else that you might have been watching?
No, not really.
No, that's about it. Well, me, myself, and I have been watching not much because I have been busy. So when I get home from work, like, what are you doing? A little dance there for?
To the me, myself, and I Beatles song.
Oh right, okay. I'm looking at me like trying to find my thing. Oh yeah, I watched Watchmen, obviously. I watched the Ultimate Cut as well, which is.
That's the only cut I watched.
3 hours and 35 minutes. Yeah, it's got the cartoon pirate story in it that's sort of intercut with the boy reading the comic, and that happens in the Watchmen graphic novel as well. Yeah, I dig it. I like long format stuff, like Doctor Sleep. I watched the director's cut of that, which is 3 hours or whatever. Like, I like seeing those. You know, what is it? What is it in its longest form, and then see what they remove to kind of be like, where does the narrative stub its toe and all that kind of stuff. So I did watch that. I watched a Terrence Malick film called The Thin Red Line, which was is a 2000 It's a World War II picture, set in sort of like the Pacific conflict. Amazing cast, amazing picture. It's just before Terrence Malick went full, like where he was still concerned with narrative before he went completely poetic, and was just making, like 2-hour tone poems. Really, really great film. And I rewatched Spotlight as well, from I think it was 2015 Academy Award winner, about the Boston Globe investigative reporting team known as Spotlight, who looked into the pedophilia in the Catholic Church. And that movie is just, it's perfect. There is nothing out of place in that movie. It's a perfect script. It's handled so well. It's directed so well. The score's fantastic. The acting is next level. It's just such a wonderful film. And I go back to it, once a year or something like that, just because it's a masterclass of storytelling elegance. It just handles its act structure so well, and the beats of information really, really land, and without like they're trying to feed you information. Like I love exposition. Expository dialogue is one of my favorite things to write. I don't know why. It's whenever, like in Buffy the Vampire Slayer, every single time Giles opened his mouth, I was like, ooh, what's he got to say for himself? Because it's always explaining like where some fucking weird demon with tits comes from. Look at your face. And the other thing I watched on Sunday night was not a movie, but I went with a bunch of mates to go and see a band called Sleep Token. Now, Sleep Token are a prog rock, or sort of prog rock band from the UK. Nobody knows who they are. They all wear masks. They're clearly young, just based on the content of their songs. But they have transcended genre in that the people in that room couldn't have been more diverse. There was every age bracket, every cultural personality, multicultural personality, every sexual identity, every gender was represented by this crowd. And we're all there for the same reason. We're all watching. It was a beautiful, experience. No talking between songs. It was just their hardest hitting tracks. And it was like going to church. It was just such a beautiful, I felt euphoric at one point. It was that powerful. And, you transcended genre when every single person it's a prog rock band. This shouldn't be the case. When every single person in that crowd knows the lyrics and we're all singing along. And the encore that the lead singer's got one of the most interesting vocal ranges and one of the most interesting vocal performances I've ever heard. It sounds like something you've heard before, but just slightly different, like from an alternate dimension. And he came on and did just him, a piano, and 3 backing singers of a song as an encore. And it sounded like he was crying. Like he's clearly, the music's heartbreaking, and he's clearly very passionate about it. And because they don't talk between songs or whatever, because it might give away who they are, I guess, I don't know. As he left, he just sort of, put his hands up to the crowd to sort of say thank you. And then he did the 2 hands heart thing, and everybody in the crowd did it. And it was special. If you get an opportunity, just go on Spotify or YouTube or whatever. They've got some great film clips, like really inventive film clips. Their most recent stuff, The Summoning and Chokehold, are some of the best songs I've ever heard. That was kind of the big thing that I watched this week, was these amazing, enigmatic musicians just get on stage and completely own an entire room of people, that are a cross section of humanity from end to end. It was spectacular. Sleep Token, check them out.
Amazing, man.
So that's that. That's what we've been watching. Do you want to do? I did it again. I did it last week too. I completely fucked up saying, "Do you want to do nerd news?" And I just went. Slowly but surely becoming Jim Carrey in 1994. Do you want to do the nerd news?
Let's do nerd news.
Sydney Sweeney's a babe.
Yeah.
Sorry, she is. She's a total babe. I just went on to my Instagram to pull up stories of the things that I've saved to talk about. And Sydney Sweeney came up, and she is just such a babe.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody in that show is.
When
Okay, so what's that?
Yeah, you can cut this out, but when the pictures of Glenn Powell and Sydney Sweeney came out, me and Leanne talked about it, and we were like, yeah, they're fucking.
They're fucking, of course, are two stunningly beautiful people in Hollywood. Let them fuck. Like, why not? It's like in the Godzilla movie. Let them fight. Let them fuck.
Or
okay,
in the Transformers trailer where Optimus Prime goes, let them come.
Yes, let them both come. I might leave that in. I don't know.
This is season 2. So fuck it.
This is season 2. Fuck it. If you're here, you're here. You know what I mean? Like, you know what the score is at this point. We can only get further. And we promised it would be dirtier. We absolutely promised that. So, but what's not dirty is nerd news. I mean, there might be a dirty story. I don't know. Firstly, apparently the Fantastic Four cast will be announced next week, and rumored to be in the offing are Adam Driver, Antonio Banderas, and Jodie Comer in as yet unnamed roles. I would say you're looking at Reed Richards, Sue Storm, and Victor Von Doom there. What do you reckon?
Yeah, there's also one you missed, which is Paul Mescal as the Human Torch.
Shut up. Shut your fucking mouth. What? No.
Yes! He's been...
Oh my God.
Apparently he's been offered that role.
Someone said something the other day. It was a... who's the young woman who was the blonde-haired dragon person in Game of Thrones?
Oh, shit. Emilia Clarke?
Emilia Clarke, yes. I think someone said that was the possibility of it being, like, instead of being Benjamin Grimm, it would be, you know, a female name and Grimm, and they were going to do it that, and someone lost their fucking mind about it. I can't remember who we were talking to. It was in some chat that we were in, and we were talking to someone.
Was it that the thing might be the girl from what's that? It's Ashton Kutcher's.
Oh, Mila Kunis.
Yes,
that's right. It wasn't Mila Kunis. I got confused with another small, petite, attractive-looking woman. Yeah, no, you're right. It was the Kunis.
Yeah,
and which sounds like something that you get when you go on holiday and don't take the medication they tell you to. What happened? Yeah, I went to Botswana and got the Kunis.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, like I don't give a shit. Like you know. Yeah. Whatever, like try new things. But I think, you know, if you're looking at that casting there, Driver and Banderas and Comer, that's sort of what you're thinking. Antonio Banderas as Victor Von Doom, you can fucking take my money. That guy's a pimp. Next. Top Gun Maverick director Joseph, I can't pronounce his last name. No, Kosinski.
Nuv.
Kosinski. Ski.
Yep.
Okay. He is directing a Formula One picture with Brad Pitt in it, which will have him doing, like, Brad Pitt doing real Formula One race car driving, and Tom Cruise has already offered to do some stunt driving for them if they need him. Because, of course, you know, the uninsurable Tom Cruise.
Of course, Brad Pitt and Tom Cruise look the same way.
No, I don't think they're doing that. I think they're just like, you know, Tom Cruise wants to get behind the wheel, and that's a good way to do it, I guess. But I'm down for whatever that guy did. He put together a magnificent picture. Top Gun Maverick, one of the best blockbusters in recent memory. So I'll check out whatever. And Brad Pitt's great. I mean, I know there's not a lot of love for this movie out there. World War Z. There's kind of like a societal obligation to hate that movie, and I don't really know why. Like, I watched it the other night, and it's a perfectly serviceable zombie picture.
Yeah.
In fact, it's kind of interesting in that it looks at the global, because normally those kind of things, like you look at The Walking Dead or Dawn of the Dead or any of those things, you know, the Last of Us, they're localized, they're contained in a certain area. This is a global thing. Like, he ends up in Israel and Southeast Asia and South Korea rather. And then back to the States and all that stuff. Like, I think, and then there's a big thing at the end where he, like, drinks a Pepsi before fucking whatever happens, and people are like, that is hideous product placement, but whatever. I mean, Jesus Christ, there's in the Transformers movies, there's literal Mountain Dew fucking dispenser machines turning into robots. Like that's what happens. That's how people make money in order to make movies. So maybe don't worry about it. Speaking about movies that would have made money, Clint Eastwood was originally meant to play the older Bruce Wayne in the now cancelled Batman Beyond film, and I wish they hadn't reported that. I want to slide into that dimension with Jerry O'Connell. You kidding me?
Batman Beyond is one of those things where it's amazing as it is, but if it's translated to film, it would be something that has never been done before. Because it has so much that it will automatically be one of the best, if done right, one of the best things. And Clint Eastwood as Bruce Wayne in that would have been insane.
There was always talk about that when he was in his sort of, 50s or late 50s, early 60s or whatever. So, a better part of 20 or 30 years ago now that he would be the perfect Batman if they ever did a proper, full-on translation of The Dark Knight Returns, the Frank Miller book. That was always the promise. But it just would have been interesting. And, you do that like it's a Blade Runner 2049, but with Batman. That's
exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah, that's how you do it. Not the original Blade Runner, because that's a little bit too gritty, but 49 is just that, the tech is up a little bit. It's a bit more neon. The architecture is kind of similar. That would have been absolutely baller. But hey, there's an alternate dimension there where we can go and peep that as alternate versions of ourselves, where I'm Indian and you're Australian.
Sure.
Just bodies. We do a body swap. We do a Freaky Friday and just see what happens. Next one. Very excited about this. This is really great. Congratulations to Jim Lee, who has been promoted to President, Publisher, and Chief Creative Officer at DC Comics. Well done, Jim. Congratulations. You're a class act. Your contributions to the art form, and the business of comic books, nothing short of spectacular, for nearly 40 years. So to be in that position now, especially with the move forward in media, with James Gunn's new plans and everything, it can only be good. It can only be good things. He's such a genuine human being, such a lovely, gentle soul on this planet, and such a beautiful talent. Good on you, mate. I'm proud of you, Jim. You've come a long way. I remember back in the day, X-Men issue 1. And then all that weird shit that you did, Gen 6, Gen 13, and what was the other one? Divine Right. Where it was like this dude named Faraday, and it was all mystical and shit. And that very, very strange run you did with Frank Miller on Batman and Robin, or the All-Star Batman and Robin, where Batman was kind of like a fucking incel. It was weird and terrible, but God, you drew the shit out of it. So bless your heart. There was two more things finally here. One is really, really quickly, the newest Flash trailer came out, and they're giving away the farm as they typically do. But what were you going to say?
Oh no, I didn't know which Flash you were talking about.
The Flash.
Yeah.
Savior of the Universe.
See, it's happening. The Flash, the last season's coming out as well. Or it's on air, so they do trailers every week. So I didn't know which one you were talking about.
Yeah, right, okay. I only bring it up because there's a still that Warner Brothers Australia posted on the Instagram account. I don't follow them. It just popped up because it's algorithmically it works. Everybody looks like they're wearing plasticine, but that's not the point. The point is there's 2 Flashes in it, right? At least 2 Flashes, both played by Ezra Miller. One of them, and I didn't notice this until I saw a still of it, is wearing a re-outfitted version of the Batman costume from Michael Keaton's Batman Returns, but it's got painted Flash.
Yeah, it's
it's the cowl with the ears cut off, and it's got over the bat. It's got the symbol of I just thought that was going to be a marketing piece that they did that, but it's the actual thing because it's got the grills where his abs should be, as opposed to the sculpted thing. He's got a vent or whatever the hell is going on there. He's got he's got one of those things that you put salad in, and then you just pull the string and it turns, and then the salad gets dry. One of those things. Salad spinner or whatever. I just thought it was weird. And a little bit of I don't know how on board I am with that. I don't know. But apparently this is truly the best superhero movie ever. Believe the hype. That was at the Real Soups on Twitter said that. Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. No judgment either way. But I think we need to talk about, just real quickly, and then we'll get into the bulk of the episode, Dune Part 2.
Thank fuck!
The trailer. That's why I left it to the end.
Oh, so I thought you forgot, man.
Of course not. What am I, a fucking savage? No, it's suitably sandy, and just, I mean, come on, it's gonna be outrageous.
It's the film that will give Denis Villeneuve his Dune trilogy, and I'm so hyped. I'm so hyped.
It'll give him his what?
It will give him his Dune trilogy. It's supposed to be a trilogy.
You think?
Yeah, because I mean, I know shit. 'Cause I've read.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I mean, anything. So much of life has a 3-act structure. You know, life in of itself has a 3-act structure. Movies do. You know, just the seasons. There's 4 of them, but there's a 4-act structure in a lot of movies as well. But people like things in uniformity. You know.
True, but like I was like when it aired live, I was in it and I was crying. And then I was like, fuck, I need to watch it again. And I watched it again, and then I was crying again. And then I watched it the 3rd time. I was like, oh my fucking God, what am I going to do?
As soon as they show Florence Pugh and the young kid who played Elvis, what's his name? Austin Butler. As Phage or whatever they go, like, fucking yep. Yes to all of those things. I'm very excited for it. We're going to do an episode on it. Dune was like our 4th episode or whatever. Yeah, so it's going to be a big one. Great. Well, that was the nerd news.
Oh, one more thing to say.
Oh, did I miss one?
No, I do have one more thing to say though. Like,
okay,
about the Dune 2 trailer. I love it. I'm not fully on board with Austin Butler as Spade because I need to hear him speak.
Yeah, that'll make a huge difference. If he sounds like Elvis, it's gonna take you out of the drama a little bit.
Because like all the scenes that he's in, at least in the trailer, are full black and white. And there's a reason for that, which I'm not gonna fucking tell. But
I'd say it's probably so that they don't reveal certain palettes and graphical changes that are gonna mean something, that have meaning. So in the movie they'll be color, or maybe it's a flashback. I don't know. Yeah,
like I thought it was a flashback too, but then he's in a shot with another character that's going to be introduced. But yeah, I was really surprised by the fan reaction against like Florence Pugh, because people did not know who she was playing. She's playing the daughter of the Emperor. Of course, she's gonna be fucking bad.
Oh, sorry, they were upset that she's playing a villain.
No, like they did not know that she had like an antagonist character. So like a few people are just fucking mad that they're like women in like everything. So
a few people, do you hear that in the internet? A few people are a little bit mad that there are women in everything. That's a lot of the internet. And fuck them. Fuck them all.
That's why we're here.
In their stupid, yeah, exactly, in their stupid incel faces. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I've said it before, people think they have ownership over this stuff, and they don't. You rent it for the price of a movie ticket, and, you know, it's like going to Blockbuster. You rent something, you don't know what it is, you take it home and it sucks. Like, well, maybe it sucks for you, and then for someone else it's the best thing that's ever been created. So just sit back and keep your mouth shut. Well, that's not true. I mean, people are allowed to express their opinion, but I do feel like there are agendas going on there more than anything else. You know, if you have a legitimate problem with Florence Pugh being in that movie, wait till the movie comes out and then write me a review that, you know, it stands up to that position. Otherwise, what are we doing? Speaking of things that are divisive, to say the least, Jesus, man. Zack Snyder's Watchmen, and I'll just say this straight up, it's one of the strangest things I've ever seen on Letterboxd, because I track movies on Addie knows this, but other people might not, on Letterboxd, I track movies so that I keep a list of what I'm watching and, you know, what number it is and when it was and blah, blah, blah. Just for myself. Occasionally I write a little quirky review because I'm adorable. And and then, you know, I log it there. But I typically have a look at what other people have kind of, you know, said, or at least their star rating. I don't really like the star rating system because it's very definitive. But anyway, man, talk about disparity. Like, it's either people think this is the best movie that's been ever made, or that it's literal human shit.
Yep. If you go on Letterboxd, you can find those two reviews where people say that it's the best thing ever made, and there's someone who's like done like a half-star rating because that's the lowest you can go on Letterboxd.
You can't do no. I think you can do no stars, but that just seems like you're not representing because nothing comes up.
Yeah.
But if you do a half, it's like, I think I've done that before for a movie. It was like, this half a star is because, you know, it had opening credits or something. You know what I mean?
Thor: Love
this is
and
such
Thunder.
a shitty film. Thor: Love and Thunder. But yeah, I mean, probably the jumping off point here would be just to talk about Zack real quickly.
Yep.
We've discussed him before. There's something missing from modern day cinema and anything that's popular as well. I don't just mean you know, Marvel movies in particular or DC movies in particular or blah blah blah. I'm talking about most movies, and I think it's okay the advent of like computer generated effects and things like that. There is kind of a blanket. It's almost like a house style. Like Ant-Man Quantumania is a perfect example of it. It is movie by committee. It is a canvas on which there are lines to. It's paint by numbers. That's exactly what I'm trying to say. There's a paint by numbers system of directing and writing and producing at the moment. That is because that is what mass appeals. Marvel movies are an example of it. The most recent Avatar, I guess, Star Wars as well. There's not a lot of identity there. There's not a lot of flourish because it is the franchise that is the draw. It's not. You don't go to see the most recent Marvel movie because you're a huge fan of the director. You go because fucking Ant-Man's in it or whatever. What's that? Well, you know, I'm talking about regular guy, you know, gal, or in between, whatever it is that you are. You know, you go to the movie, you put your bucks down, you know, and I'm not talking about the art house world either, or talking about the people who have really definitive voices who don't work in genre like this. So, you know, people like David Cronenberg or Martin Scorsese who make Cronenberg films, who make Scorsese films. Christopher Nolan's another great example. Christopher Nolan makes Christopher Nolan pictures. Like, they're still there. But if you're looking at the people who work within the mass media and what is vastly more popular than anything else, there is no style. James Gunn was one we talked about before. I think he's probably the last of it, you know. Say what you will about Zack Snyder as a filmmaker or a person. Like, his politics or whatever, I don't know. I know that there's some ideas about him being a Randian. That's totally fine. He has never come out and said anything like that, despite the fact that he does want to remake The Fountainhead, which is an Ayn Rand book. But he has a very, very definitive eye. And I said it to you, Addie, when we were talking about this picture the other night when I was watching it. I was sending you the voice messages. You turn on the radio anywhere in the world and you hear the first few chords of a Metallica song, you know it's Metallica. You hear the first few chords of Creep, you know it's Radiohead. Like, some bands, some music, just it catches your ear and you can recognize that. Even if it's a new song, you're like, oh, that's the style of. Sleep Token's a great example. You can play the first few seconds of a new Sleep Token song that I haven't heard before, and I'm going to know who it is. You turn on a TV, and all of a sudden there's a Zack Snyder movie on that you haven't seen, like Sucker Punch or something like that, and you look at the stylistic decisions, the flourishes, the use of high contrast and dynamic movement, of slow-mo, absolutely. But, you know, he's a graphic artist. He wants to freeze a moment and capture it forever. You 100% understand this is a Zack Snyder picture. That is what I appreciate about it, man. I don't always agree with his decisions as a storyteller, but fuck, man, like what an end-to-end talent. Like, he shoots most of his own stuff. He didn't start making feature-length motion pictures till he was 35, and before that he'd made dozens upon dozens of music videos and commercials. Like he trained himself. He cut his teeth, as an operator, as a DP, and he really, really gives a shit. You don't spend 3 months like drafting the script in storyboards. Like that's what he does every single time, and he says it's really hard. It's really difficult, and he doesn't recommend people do it, but that's how he breaks it down visually for himself and for his teams. You don't do that if you don't give a shit. And I applaud him for that level of dedication and for that love of the art form. I just wanted to say that up front about Zack, because I know it's really trendy to hate him now. He's kind of the new Michael Bay. It's like, oh, fucking Zack Snyder, and because of the divisiveness around the DCU. But never forget, this is also a motherfucker who like just pulled up and made one of the best remakes of all time with Dawn of the Dead, and managed to get Watchmen to the big screen. And we'll talk about how difficult that was, but he managed to pull it off because 300 was so successful. So anyway, that's my Zack rant. Did you want to fill in anything there?
Yeah, absolutely. I fucking love Zack Snyder. Like, yeah, I don't agree with all the decisions he makes when he's in his films, but that's his film. Like, I'm paying a ticket to watch his film.
Yeah, exactly. You get what you're given, kind of thing. But it's like I said, he is a definitive voice. He is a someone. No one else makes Zack Snyder movies. Yeah. I know most of his movies have been based on other things, but that you give the script of fucking. And I said this about Tim Burton's Batman Returns as well. You give the script of Batman versus Superman to another director, and the end product is vastly different. The only thing that matches is the fucking words.
Maybe even not.
Yeah, that's true. He does work pretty closely with Chris Terrio, the screenwriter.
But yeah, I mean, like, I love comic shit and I love cape shit. Like, it's the thing that gives me it's the thing that gives me so much joy. But like, my favorite director is Wes Anderson, and I love Wes Anderson because of his distinct voice in everything that he does. Right? Yep. And it's the same thing with Zack Snyder. Like, you put on a film of his, and it's immediate. Like, either you're hooked or you're like, oh shit, what is this? Yeah. And like, a lot of people like give him shit for using slow-mo. I've always been an amazing. What the fuck? No.
You have always been amazing, ladies and gentlemen. Addie, everyone, give a round of applause for Addie. He has always been amazing. He's always been the best. He's just the best there is. He is the podcaster of the year. Congratulations. Here's your trophy. Sorry, I don't know. Took that joke for a walk. Sorry. You down the street with my little joke on a leash. Come on, buddy. Come on, joke. Come on, little joke.
Oh, God.
Idiots. I literally just heard my kittens meowing because I was talking to them. Like, that's how I talk to them. Sorry, you're amazing.
No. I've always been a fan of amazing slow motion. That was the point. And I fucking adore and love that Zack Snyder is one of those people who just does it. Like, there is no way that you can show the Flash like moving in like fucking Speed Force if it's not slow motion. Like, yeah. And that's one of the greatest comic book like things that have ever happened on screen.
And if you look at things like that, the decision to make that moment happen, it's funny, that moment. I was thinking about it the other day where he's like, forget the past, forget the future, because it's all right now. That's almost like verbatim, like Taoism. It's almost a Taoist philosophy, which is interesting. But anyway, regardless of that, when you hear him talk about these moments and the motivations to get to these points and things like that, in that great interview, 2-part interview with his on Pizza Film School with the Russo brothers, where he's talking about, his idea for the Justice League was always to get to that apocalyptic ending. Like, that was always what had interested him. And he is by no means a sideline director. Like, he doesn't just let material sit. he works at it, and he grinds it out. He figures out what it is that he likes about it, and then he synthesizes, which is taking Batman and Superman and looking it through the prism of how do these characters speak to me, and that's a different version of a movie than you would get from anyone else. Like Watchmen, the graphic novel, is by no means as violent as the movie is. Like it doesn't depict violence in the same way. It's probably not as cynical either. It's not as bleak. And there's some changes and things, but it's definitely, the DNA's there. But he has made Watchmen the movie himself, and Alan Moore said it to the screenwriter David Hayter. He was like, the graphic novel is mine, the movie is yours, and neither the twain shall meet. I don't want to be involved, but if you ever want to chat with me, that's totally fine. David Hayter, I was listening to an interview with him, and he said at one point he called up Alan Moore and he's like, can we chat for a minute about such and such? He's like, oh yeah, sure, I'm just making muffins. Like this weird wizard in his kitchen making muffins. But yeah, I think you would be mistaken to think that there's some part of Zack Snyder doesn't care. Like I used to say it. I've said it on camera before. Like, you can go back and watch an old episode of The Stitch Up talking about how I don't think he understands these characters. He absolutely does. He just understands them through the prism of his own experience. You know what I mean?
And that's how everyone should understand every character. Like,
yeah, how else do you have something to say? Exactly. If you're just going to say something that everybody's saying. It's so silly. I don't know. I appreciate it. He's also a decent human being. Like he's never. You don't get Ben Affleck coming back. You don't get Ezra Miller coming back. You don't get Jared Leto coming back. You don't get all these people coming back to do reshoots on a movie that failed epically in your absence, and you're making a 4-hour version of it. It's funny, when they were going to do the that as like a mini series, they couldn't do it because you've got to pay people differently for TV instead of movies, so they had to make it a movie. But regardless of that, these people don't come back. Ben Affleck's come on record as saying that the reshoots of Justice League were literally the worst work experience of his life, like the worst shooting experience of his life. You don't come back to work on that stuff again if you don't care about who's doing it. And he's also, got a big family. A lot of his children are adopted. Like, he's a decent human being. He cares about people as well, which, that makes a huge difference. It really does. It doesn't matter. You can divorce yourself from someone's personality or politics only so far. If he was a piece of shit, I wouldn't care. Like, I don't really care. I think Michael Bay is a really definitive voice as well. He's another person who you turn on a movie of his and you're like, fuck, that's a Michael Bay movie for sure. Damn, for sure. But he's also kind of a dick. Like, you hear him in interviews or you hear him on set and he shouts at people and he's really horrible to extras and like, well, fuck you then. Like, but Zack seems like a halfway decent dude.
Yeah, I feel like everything he does is a labor of passion and love. Like, he gives it all in everything that he does. And like, I've not read the Watchmen. I've not read Watchmen at all. Like, not even the graphic novel that this is like adapted from.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But like, I've heard people say that graphic novel is unadaptable because there's just so much.
Yeah. Yep.
And I've seen this criticism. I don't know if you agree, but I don't. But the criticism is that, like, Zack Snyder only does films on already based IPs, or he only does adaptations because he doesn't, like, he's not as creative as those things, so he can just pull it and put it on screen. You can't do that if you're not creative.
No, if anything, it's almost harder because you have something you have a standard to live up to, or a standard to set, as opposed to a piece of original material that can be what it is as like from Genesis. It's just like it springs forth and is whatever. It's E.T. But to and that's what people kind of dig into. But if you're doing Superman, there's a standard set already before you even fucking walk in the door. So yeah, I don't agree with that criticism at all. That's yeah. Some people, you can go in wanting to hate stuff really, really easily. I would prefer to go in open-minded and be disappointed I'm okay with being disappointed. If I don't dig it, you just don't take it home with you. You know, it's like Ant-Man 3 sucks. Like, and I'm a positive person. It sucked. It was completely unmemorable, and I didn't care for it at all. Somebody loves it. Someone fucking loves that movie, and that's a beautiful thing. But I didn't take it with me. I didn't get in the car and wasn't mad about it. They did fucking Ant-Man wrong. Like, who gives a fuck? Someone else will do it eventually. And like, that's the thing about the Superman-Batman thing. If you don't dig it, don't worry about it. James Gunn's got a couple in the pipe. He's ready to go. He's got more movies coming out of his bum than you fucking could possibly imagine, mate. He's got more movies than Blockbuster when it was open. But yeah, let's talk about that really quickly. The graphic novel. It is an amazing graphic novel. It's so dense and so intelligently written. And Alan Moore is one of the greatest writers, not comic book writers. He's one of the greatest writers of all time. The Watchmen and parts of his Swamp Thing run, I think, are still on like the top 10 best novels ever written. List of, whenever they make those lists. Definitely Watchmen, at least. His run on Swamp Thing is one of the only things I go back to with any frequency. Just some of the most intelligent, provocative, and thought-provoking work that's ever been done in the medium. And Watchmen was that, absolutely. He actually originally wanted to do the same sort of story, but using a bunch of characters that were bought by DC when they absorbed the Charlton Comics line. So the Owl would have been Blue Beetle. Rorschach would have been the Question. And DC said, no, we want to, bring those characters into our world and play with them. We don't want you fucking them up, basically. So he created his own characters. And to the betterment of the story, honestly. But yeah, it was a 12-issue series, the last issue of which was months late, which drove fans absolutely bananas. And working with Dave Gibson, who's one of the premier godfathers of modern comic art. He's up there with Alex Ross, absolutely. Neil Adams, Steve Ditko. People who changed the medium, who changed the way that we saw things. His panel work is some of the most cinematic shit you'll ever see. And you talk about it being unfilmable. The TV series intentionally diverted, like they had the HBO had, or Warner Brothers had the property of Watchmen, and said to Damon Lindelof, we want to adapt Watchmen. And he goes, well, I'm not fucking doing it. Like, there's no way unless you let me do something else. And he basically did a sequel to the book, not a sequel to the movie, because it involves something huge in the movie that's cut out at the end. It's basically a ruse that they're going to use Dr. Manhattan as this sort of world-ending threat to not only cleave the population, a la Thanos, but also get people back in line. Get people to believe in fear again. Basically, that's what Adrian Voigt's idea is. In the comic, he opens a dimensional portal, and a giant squid monster comes down that is also telepathic and makes people go insane and all that stuff. They did that very, very well in the TV show, but neglected to do that in the movie for whatever reason. Maybe the huge squid thing was a hard sell. I don't know. But in terms of it not being filmable, Terry Gilliam was attached at one point, the director, who's one of the Monty Python guys, directed Brazil and Brothers Grimm. Most recently, the man who killed Don Quixote. Wonderful director. He called it unfilmable, and moved on from the project at one point. And then when David Hayter was on it, David Hayter, who also wrote the X-Men, the 2000 picture, and I believe its sequel. He's still a writer-director now. He's got a TV show on Netflix called Warrior Nun. He was an actor too. He was in Guyver, that movie I sent you the other day. Fucking dope shit.
So cool.
Did you? Yeah, it's awesome, isn't it? It's so shitty. It's so B-movie, but the fucking prosthetic work is outstanding.
Amazing.
Yeah, especially the Guyver suit. It shouldn't have been that good. There was no reason for it to be that good. But it's just this dude in a fucking biomechanical armor kicking the shit out of werewolf dudes in the jungle, in the bush. So good. But yeah, he was a writer on that. He became, quite bankable because of the success of X-Men, and they said to him, hey, what do you want to do? And he goes, look, Watchmen. I've always wanted to do Watchmen. That's my shit. That's my shizzle. I can adapt it. I think I can do it. Let me do it, basically. And he signed his contract to produce a screenplay for The Watchmen on September the 10th, 2001.
Wow.
Yeah, so a day before 9/11, he signed a contract to write a movie in which, at the very end, New York gets decimated. And it was part of the reason why that doesn't exist in its current form, because when the screenplay was written, they didn't think that was appropriate. Fair enough. That's, making those decisions in that time must have been very difficult. But the next sort of cycle of that, it's always been Hader who was on there. I believe Damon Lindelof maybe had something to do with it, in the beginning, because he would have been doing Lost at the time. And Zack would have come on later and work on the screenplay. But Paul Greengrass, director of the second, third, and fifth Bourne movies, so Bourne Supremacy, Bourne Ultimatum, and Jason Bourne, would come on, and his movie was really interesting, like totally different. It was going to start with the comedian sort of like handsome hair flowing back, domino mask on, flying through the air kind of thing, and then the camera would tilt down and you realize he's not flying, he's falling. So he's being thrown out of a window, which is the beginning of that picture. And also, he referenced a photograph of a marginal indigent, a homeless person, whose face was caked in mud, and he couldn't see the human presence underneath, and that's what he wanted for Rorschach. He didn't want it to look like a mask. He wanted it to be this thing. So real interesting sort of stylistic changes. And then they were like 3 months from shooting, and the executive who was in charge of the project was fired at Warner Brothers, and they pulled it. And then it wouldn't get picked up until later when Zack was at Warner Brothers after 300, and they were talking about what he wanted to do next, and he found out they were doing Watchmen and said that. So he even talked about Watchmen doing the press tour with Frank Miller for 300, and Frank was like, I can't believe you did this. How the fuck are you going to do Watchmen? And he's like, don't worry about it. So yeah, storied history, absolutely. And I can't figure out why people, like, even if you're a Watchmen purist, which I'm not, like, it's not that important to me the way that it is some people. Even if you are a Watchmen purist, I don't know what the problem with this movie is.
I wouldn't know because I have no previous, but this is one of the most interesting and I would say invested I've ever been in a superhero movie, because like I almost don't even want to call that, because it's so anti superhero movie, especially in the era that we live now.
Yeah.
Like, these are not amazing people. These are people who have done fucked up shit and are fucked up people.
Yeah.
And
you would never get away with any of this stuff anymore. Like, at one point, the comedian, played fantastically by Jeffrey Dean Morgan, shoots a fucking a pregnant woman. He got pregnant, in Vietnam, and that's another thing. Making it period, making it like set when it's set, and it's Nixon, and it's post Vietnam, and the reason they won Vietnam is Dr. Manhattan. We'll come back to Dr. Manhattan because that story is particularly interesting. Sorry. Yeah, that is a schwanz like you never believe. My God. But also Billy Crudup, one of my favorite actors, just singular talent. But we'll come back to that. But yeah, I mean, there's that. You've got Rorschach is... If Rorschach wasn't so dedicated to justice, like at the end of that picture where he says, it doesn't matter that we're facing apocalypse. Right is right and wrong is wrong. And if you do the wrong thing, even for the right reasons, you should be punished. If he wasn't dedicated to good, he would just be a serial killer.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's super interesting, when you see the progression of all the characters, where they started and where they came from. Like, Dan, he just fell in love with the idea of being a superhero. And as trained as he is, he's just a dude, like, and he had this relationship with the original Al, and that's where it comes from. What's the character's name? Who's the daughter? Molly Ackerman's character.
Holy shit, this is bad.
I'm trying to remember her character name, like the superhero character
Yeah.
name, and Rorschach keeps calling her that, and she's like, "Stop calling me that. I'm not that anymore."
Jupiter?
Yeah, like Lady Jupiter, or whatever, and
Laurie Jupiter.
You've got Lady Jupiter, is it?
Laurie Jupiter.
Laurie Jupiter.
I guess Laurie would be like her name, and Jupiter would be like her stage name or superhero name.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And she's in it like opportunistically because her mum was.
Yeah.
Her mum's this fading starlet who played by Carla Gugino, who is just
amazing.
All of the times she's amazing.
Yes.
From all the beginning times, the son-in-law times with the Wheeze and the Juice guy, all the way to now. She was in a Pauly Shore picture called Son-in-Law. All the way up until whatever I've seen in most recently. And she's like, kind of obsessed with her older image, and then you've got Dr. Manhattan, who is a living god, and like completely loses faith in humanity, and then decides not to save them, but then decides to save them because of where Jupiter came from, where Laurie came from, and Rorschach being just a crime fighter, and then finding the bones of the little girl who was killed being eaten by those two dogs, and he hacks that guy to pieces. Like, it's not the right thing to do, but I'm not 100% against it either. Like,
absolutely.
In terms of the like, where does the line? So if that's the case, if they're doing the wrong thing, that's the wrong thing. So he's kind of an unusual, like, he's Batman with no moral code at all. And that's interesting as well. And then, you hear him talk, and they kind of make light of it at one point, and there's a little beat of Jesus in there where there was a character, it's Laurie and Dan are having dinner, and they're talking about a guy who was a villain who just got off on getting beaten up. Like, he got a sexual release from being beaten up, and he used to chase people down the street and chase Owlman. He's like, just beat me up. And Laurie says, whatever happened to him? And he goes, well, he tried that shit with Rorschach and he dropped him down an elevator shaft. Which is hysterical, but fucked up too. Like, there's a lot going on here in terms of its theme and character and stuff that it's really easy to miss that in all the gloss, in all the speed ramping and fucking, that sequence where Rorschach breaks into the Dr. Manhattan's testing ground and he like jumps up onto the top of that building and the rain's pouring down, like striking images visually. Like, I think Zack's kind of like curbed his style a little bit when he was working in the DCU, perfectly honestly, and it'll be interesting to see, because Army of Darkness was fucking one of the most amazingly shot films I've seen in the last 10 years. Like,
Army of the Dead?
Army of the Dead, sorry, not Army of Darkness. Yeah,
like, what? That's Evil Dead, no?
Yeah. Super shallow focus with those really, really short lenses with the wide open aperture. And he operated. It was just on his shoulder the whole time. Like, just amazing. It'll be interesting to see. Let's get some Watchmen and some of that and put it into Rebel Moon.
I cannot fucking tell you how excited I am for that film. But we also need to get paid for that.
I know. We have done more promotional shit for Rebel Moon, and we don't know anything about anything. We've never seen anything about it. We don't know what's going on. There's not even a trailer for the shits yet. Like, there's some pretty intense work that's we've been doing for you, Zack. So give me a ring. You can be on the podcast too. I reckon he would come on if he wasn't busy.
Yeah.
But yeah, so getting back to Watchmen. Regardless of Zack's sort of hands on it. There's some great performances. Like, cinematography is amazing too. There's a lot of really interesting moral ideas going on there. Like, the thing that I particularly liked that I caught this time was the reason that they've changed it to, instead of a giant squid monster and all the little squid monsters and the telepathic control and stuff, instead of having that, they've got Dr. Manhattan be the nuclear threat. And half of the reason I think in this movie that's the case is because Adrian is jealous of him. Because Adrian is he was Ozymandias or Ozymandias or however you pronounce it, the smartest man alive. And if it wasn't for Dr. Manhattan, that would be true. But it's not true because Dr. Manhattan exists. It's almost a Lex Luthor Superman situation. Half of the reason that Lex Luthor has a problem with Superman is because he could never be
Yeah.
that powerful and that good.
And
And that's really interesting.
And his whole thing is, how can you be that powerful and then be that good?
Yeah, exactly. Like well, I would be corrupted, but why wouldn't you be corrupted? Oh, you would be. Of course you would be,
Yeah.
And Dr. Manhattan is an interesting character, particularly in the movie, because of the way that he perceives time. Like fourth dimensional logic always trips me out. Like I love it. It's really, really interesting, the different ways that you can think about it and stuff like that. And it does go back to a Taoist theory of like time stretching on ahead and time stretching on before you. So no matter where you are in life, you're always in the middle because the time behind you and the time in front of you are infinite. And I like that as a concept. But being able to, like in the conversations that she has with him, that Laurie has with Dr. Manhattan, where he's like, "You're about to tell me this, and then I'm going to react this way," and she's like, and then he does react. She goes, "Well, if you knew you were going to react like that, why are you reacting like that?" And he's like, "I don't have any control over what happens.
Yeah,
I'm in this moment now. This is the moment we're in." Imagine being untethered from time. Imagine being the inability to quantify time as an objective thought. Like the only reason time exists is because we give it value by having clocks and by having times of day and seasons and months and years and all that stuff. Like it's such a human construct. But time in of itself is infinite. There is, even after everything's just nothing, time will continue, and it's only verbalized using those letters. It doesn't exist as a universal concept. It just is. So imagine having to deal with that on a daily basis. Of course you would be alienated. Of course you would be, other. The Billy Crudup's performance as Dr. Manhattan is fantastic. Like the gentleman who played him in the TV series, whose name I do know, but I always butcher trying to say it. And I feel like I'm doing a disservice to him every time I do. But remarkable actor. He was also in Candyman recently, and the Candyman requel or whatever you want to call it. He did kind of the same thing where it was he finds it necessary to interact with human beings only in so much as that he has to explain himself all the time. And if he didn't have to do that, he'd be quite happily silent and just get about what he has to do. Billy Crudup's performance in this role, and Zack said it on Pizza Film School, that he taught him a lot about the process of acting, and he's a very serious thespian. Like he takes it really seriously, and you can tell. I mean, he's in spotlight, and he plays this lawyer who was sort of part of the problem, but also, couldn't control what the Catholic Church was doing. Just incredible. And that his origin in the middle of that movie, where it sort of splits away, and he's like, on such and such a date, a human circulatory system is seen in the cafeteria, and on this certain date, a muscular structure screams and then flashes to light, and of course that's what would happen. Of course that's what would happen if a being of infinite power and unlimited energy was discovered on planet Earth. He would 100% get conscripted by the US military to win conflicts. Let's not pretend that wouldn't happen. He is a nuclear weapon on two legs. As soon as they figured out they could do that, they did it. So there's that as well. I mean, having not a human conscience, but having a conscience as being a being of that amount of power, is endlessly fascinating. And I just love that thing. And I also love, like, we can make some jokes about it. I love the fact that they just let him be nude, because if you're a being of ultimate power and you are energy, going on endlessly through time, backwards and forwards at all moments, you don't give a shit about undies.
Exactly.
You don't give a shit about me undies. Like, he's not going to do it.
Yeah. And I love that sequence of like Dr. Manhattan as the actual human dying and then becoming this energy that's there, and him, like, when he first materializes, he has like a skeleton, and by the time, like, at the end of the film, he doesn't perceive himself as that. Like he's so detached.
Yeah.
And like going back to that scene where the comedian kills the pregnant woman. It's like all of it is there in that scene where he shoots her, and and then he looks at him. He's like, "Why? You could have stopped me. You could have you could have turned my
Could
gun
have turned
into."
the bullets into steam. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. That is the question. Like, what is the end of omnipotence? Like, if you have all power and are all knowing and you don't act, it's the God complex. It's absolutely the God complex.
it is. And like, there is no fucking way someone that with that power could exist and not have a god complex.
Mm.
Especially someone who was human before.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
It's like we were talking about, you sent me the picture of, for those who don't know, in the most recent issue of Nightwing, Nightwing has been given unlimited power by the Lord of Hell. As he says, Nightwing is protecting a young girl who Lord of Hell owns the soul of, and he's like, I'm not giving her to you. And Lord of Hell says, I can give you power to save everyone. Let's just give you a taste. And he turns him into Super Nightwing, basically. How good do you, I mean, it's Dick Grayson, so of course he's going to be all right. But if you look at this, like that the corruptibility of the regular human soul of a person who is also already would have had an ego, an inflated sense of self, being in love, being young, being as intelligent as he is, working on these incredible problems, and then to have your body atomized and come back as pure energy. And it speaks to that because part of that story, part of his origin story is the infidelity of him going to the meeting of the Watchmen, or the Minutemen as they're called in the comics, to that meeting where, they're all getting together to fight crime, and he notices Laurie and she notices him, and there's thing there, and he leaves his wife for Laurie, and then that relationship devolves because he can only consume. There's just, I think people watch it and there's a layer of something on it. Maybe it is the Zack thing. I don't know. People just look and go, oh, it's all slow-mo or whatever. It's too stylized. There's a lot going on there dramatically, emotionally, that you kind of miss on a first pass. And I think it benefits watching the longer version as well, because you invest. You sort of sit in it a lot more, and you kind of give yourself the opportunity to be taken over by the possibilities that nobody in this is either nobody is a saint and nobody is safe. Even at the end, when spoilers, if you're listening to this, there's spoilers. At the end, where Rorschach says, like I said before, good is good and should be, and bad is bad, and nothing in between, black and white. That's what his mask means. That's what he is. He has to, like, they know that Adrian's right. They know that in order to avoid nuclear war, they have to do this. They have to let this thing go off, and Dr. Manhattan has to be the scapegoat. And so Dr. Manhattan kills Rorschach, and the blood becomes a Rorschach on the snow, like shit like that, man. Like, I know a lot of that's from the graphic novel because he snatches moments from it, like where the comedian goes out the window and the smiley face
with the blood splatter,
thing, whatever it's with the badge thing, gets the blood on it. Like, that's another thing as well. Like, fucking give it up for the CG work in this movie. Shit, like, that holds up.
Like, I was watching that film and there was not a moment where I thought, that blue person is not real.
Yeah, and there's just the facial capture on it, and a lot of it's dynamic lighting as well, but that button's not there. That button doesn't land on the ground like that. Like, that's a CG button, and it fucking lives in the scene. Like, it's better than anything that he did when he was at DC. But that's probably, he had more time, I think, probably with Watchmen.
Like, I love Rorschach, and I've never seen him, like, I think he might be in the show. I've not seen the show.
No, it's his visage or his image has been hijacked by the alt-right, and they're using it as, those masks to do bad things. because they've misread his story. They've misread his idea of justice and right and wrong, because he talks about in his diary that eventually gets published. At the end of the picture, he talks about the filth and the whores and the this and the that and whatever. It's just, he's not a good character. He's not a good person, even in the least. Comes from a terrible, tragic background. But yeah, his ideals get hijacked by a bunch of people who misread it all, I think. So, sorry, you were saying you do like him. You're not sure if he's in the thing, yeah?
Yeah, the tragedy, the tragedy of Rorschach is that he's a person who believes in good, or like bad and good, and light and dark in a world that is just grey.
Yeah, murky grey, like politically, socially, spiritually as well. There's a weird like vein of people, like gods being irrelevant because of these people who are here. It's the same argument they make in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, is like, what place does religiosity have here when there's a guy who can fly down from the sky with a hammer in his hand, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and like, just this was The Boys before The Boys was a thing.
Yeah, you don't get The Boys without Watchmen.
Absolutely not. And like just seeing the gradual like descent of just Rorschach, and like his relationship with Dan as well, going from just being
beautiful.
It's like at the end, like before they get on to like the ship, he says, "You're a good friend," and he shakes his hand. It's not something you see a character like Rorschach would do. Like it's sort of like just putting it out there that this part of him exists, but is not completely him.
Yeah.
And like all of these Minutemen are like that. And like his fight scene in the prison where he doesn't kill but also kills a lot of people.
Yeah. Just the start of that, where it's the guy comes up to him and they're like, "Hey, we know you." Like, Jackie Earle Haley is amazing for someone of his stature. He is so imposing, and where he tips the hot oil on that guy, and he's like, "You guys don't seem to understand. I'm not locked in here with you. I'm not locked in here with you. You're locked in here with me." Like, what the fuck, man? That is that's a fucking dunk. That is a dunk of a comment, man. He jumped from the fucking free throw line to get that one in. Just awesome. Like, he's such a like, say what you will about his politics and stuff like that, and his indefensible behavior. He's a fucking baller ass character. Doesn't fuck around. He's basically what would happen if Damian Wayne didn't have Batman to kind of curb him into like, you need to do the right thing. It's just like Talia goes, "Go out and fight crime," and he starts cutting homies' heads off and shit. Like, yeah,
that is just so true.
Yeah, it's outrageous.
There's a universe where that's true, and there's an arc where Damian goes from Damian Wayne to Rorschach.
Yeah, and in the future stories of Damian Wayne, like in the book Deceased, like capital D capital C East, that Tom Taylor wrote, where it's the anti-life equation has been transmitted, as a virus through technology, and people are turning into zombies and clawing their own faces off and shit like that. Damian Wayne and Jonathan Kent are sort of the new Batman and Superman, because Superman and Batman get infected, and they grow up through the course of this story. And at one, like, Damian ends up in a fucking all white Batman costume and shit, and he's totally well adjusted, and he talks about his feelings, and he has a love affair, and his best friend's this, and he hugs people. Like, he's like, he's like me if I was Batman, you know what I mean? It's like, yeah, no, I understand my feelings, and I think you're important. Like, and let this go and punch evil in its face. Like, yeah, I don't know. It's just, it's interesting to see someone who is that. And the whole film in itself is kind of an oddity now as well, because this is stuff you just aren't going to see in genre anymore. And when I say genre, I mean the superhero genre, because that's what this is. Or it's science fiction at the very least. People get hurt, and people have moral ambiguity, and people are betrayed and then come back, and then there's different like ethnicities and different sexual proclivities, and there's all these, like you said, all these grey areas. I mean, let's give it up. Dan and Laurie straight up fuck. They fuck hard to
Hallelujah.
To Hallelujah by what's his name?
Leonard
Cohen. Still think the Jeff Buckley version's better, but that's just me. Come at me if you want. But they fuck in the owl ship, and after saving people, like they get their groove back, and and you see there's riding and gyration and pulsing and sweat, and it's like, yes, remember when people were people, and there was eroticism and love and tenderness and along with brutality and all that's like real physical human shit, as opposed to a bunch of people standing next to each other talking about what fucking superhero they have to fight or supervillain they have to fight. Like, the reality of life is completely missing from this genre stuff at the moment, in my opinion. Even something like The Batman, there's definitely some sexual tension between him and Catwoman, but nothing happens. As opposed to Batman Returns, where they're fucking grinding on each other and she's grabbing his dick under camera and like licking his face. Like, I'm not saying that things need to be pornographic. Absolutely not. That's a whole different thing. But we need to stop avoiding human nature, because it's making things sterile. It's making things really easy to dismiss because we don't see ourselves in it anymore. The reason I'm watching Watchmen and I'm like, this is some sexy shit. Sexy shit's awesome, or this is like, people are having real reactions to things. Of course you would be, if all of a sudden some a deified creature came into my life and stole my fucking woman away, or like someone left me for a god, I'd be pretty fucking mad about it too. Like, the reality that is on display here in such an unreal place was super refreshing within this genre, because it's just not something I've seen. I think the best example in modern movies would be Guardians, where the original Guardians, where there's a guy who's lost his family and willing to do anything, and and there's a raccoon creature who was tortured and is kind of an asshole because of it, and there's a kid who was stolen from his mother, and like, there's all these real feelings, and he's, the opening of that movie is like he's had been having sex with this woman. He's like, I didn't actually remember you were there. Like, there's these real people behind all the stuff, as opposed to now where there's nothing behind all the stuff. It's just, how do we get to the next movie?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think given the time, this movie's going to warm. Like, people are going to warm to this movie more and more. Just based on where we are. It's going to be one of those things where Rebel Moon does come out and people start doing a reevaluation of Zack's old stuff, because there is some real gems there. Like, what in an ideal world, Zack gets to, this is successful, and Zack gets, I know that he went on to do DC and stuff like that, but he's given a little bit more respect than he probably did get at the time. And he becomes a premier director in Hollywood, and he has control over, everything that he's doing. Do you think that the DC landscape's different? Do you think he had to compromise a bit there? Because I really think he did.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you don't go from a story like Man of Steel to then Batman v Superman.
Yeah, you fucking stole the words right out of my mouth, man. Yeah, which is fair, because I have a lot of words. But explain to me why you think that is.
I mean, I think he's also said that like his whole plan for the Justice League was to introduce these characters and then have the team formed. Like, just because the MCU had done it doesn't mean that it's a bad thing. Like, that's the right way to do it. And I feel like there is a right way where you can have the Justice League film and then go off in different branches and have these characters do their own thing. But also, Batman v Superman is filled with things that are supposed to come after that. Like, most of its second or third act is just that.
Yeah.
And in including that, you miss you miss so much of Clark Kent. You miss so much of Clark Kent understanding why the Batman is a thing to be feared for or feared from. And I feel like if he had a bit more, just a bit more breathing room to, like, the ultimate cut of that isn't perfect, but it gives you so much more context than the 2 hour film.
It's more interesting. Yeah, they make more interesting turns, and it gives the opportunity for Clark Kent to be Clark Kent and do some investigative reporting and all that stuff, because he is very nude in that film. But even Man of Steel is that there's. I do love Zack's, like, I don't know if I have a style. I really can't tell. I mean, I know that when I look at my work, it has my fingerprints on it because I worked on it. But I think you would have to show someone all of my stuff and go, does he have a style? I really don't know if I do. But I love his close, like his intimate framework, and his handheld work is amazing. Like, to put that stuff in a Superman movie, like particularly the start, before he's in the costume. That's pretty ballsy, to be. But even that is compared to his normal style. Like, I do think that by the time you get to the middle of the second act of that movie, it's a DC movie and not a Zack Snyder movie.
But that's totally fine. Like, it's a Superman movie. Like at some point, the whole DC thing is gonna come along.
Yeah. But I do like that he is given the opportunity now to be like, all right, what are you? You've done this, and you've been kind of given the short end of the stick here, and it's been blamed on you. All of these things that have happened, so much so that we have to revamp almost from scratch. And Netflix is like, hey, Zack, you want to come and do a fucking zombie picture? That's my Netflix. I don't remember how to Netflix, but that's what he sounds like now. He sounds like, in my head, what my cat Clark sounds like, because he's the smallest and that's his voice. Anyway, do you want to come over and do that? And he's like, yeah, can I do it exactly how I want to do it and without any fucking oversight whatsoever? And they're like, yeah, sure, absolutely. And he's like, you know what, I'm going to stick around here for a while and do Rebel Moon, which was supposed to be his Star Wars picture. And I think now that whether that does well or doesn't do well, I don't know. It's hard to track these things, the Netflix algorithms and all that kind of shit. I just hope he continues to expand as an artist and try new things and have more of an individual voice by doing creator-owned projects. It's, we're talking about Jim Lee before. Homie started on X-Men, was one of the biggest artists in the world, went to creator-owned and built a whole comic book company, was one of the founders of Image Comics, and then founded Wildstorm, and then moved back to DC and worked on Batman and Superman, the Justice League. Like, maybe that's the place to go. Let Zack kind of grind it out for a little while on some of his own stuff and figure some shit out, and then bring him back. You want to do like a Justice League movie in 10 years' time when they've rebuilt this universe, and give him another shot. I'm not against it.
Let's not even do a Justice League film. Let's do a Justice League Dark film.
Yeah. Oh, give him Justice League Dark and have Constantine and Zatanna fuck and do wand shit on each other. Like, use wands, like make wands go up one another and be like, yes, this is the shit. I've got a wand in me. You've got a wand in you. This is the best time we've ever had. This is a Zack Snyder picture, R-rated. Like, that's pretty cool to me. Yeah. Or let him do an Injustice movie.
The Injustice movie.
Like they're doing Elseworlds shit.
You know what? I'm actually not for that, because I feel like his whole vision was leading towards the Injustice storyline. Because even at the end of the Justice League film, we see a Dark Superman that, like, they have to fight again. So there was a point where, Lois dies and he turns.
Yeah. And
there was, like, he was literally creating the dead body of Lois Lane in the flash forward that Cyborg has, like in his stories of extravagant people with capes, he gives them real consequences. Like, there's like, nobody else would do that with Cyborg, but when Cyborg pushes that button, he gets that vision, and it's a loud reminder that you do this and this shit will happen. Like, there's no going back from that.
Certainly doesn't shy away from the fact that these, like, power as it is represented always has consequences. Even though the end of the third act of Superman, like Man of Steel, is completely tone deaf to that because it's destruction porn, but then that was addressed later. But I do think character wise they don't get away with things that you would sometimes let a character get away with in this genre. But anyway, I look forward to seeing what else he does. Watchmen was a great rewatch. I actually bought it on Apple TV in 4K, because it was the only way to watch the ultimate cut. I'm like, fuck it, I've got $14 for this. I can represent, in 4K no less. And it looked beautiful. It was a great transfer. Zack Snyder works well in 4K, because he's, there's some beautiful shit. I'm gonna go back and rewatch Army of the Dead. Actually, I really enjoyed that picture when I first watched it. There's a Stitch Up episode on it that I did with Hugo Ferrant on the Stitch Up YouTube page. If anyone wants to check that out, we had a good time chatting about it. But before we finish up talking about Watchmen, was there any final thoughts? Any pearls of wisdom you took away from it this time, or any recommendations that you might give to the folks out there?
I would say if you really do like Zack Snyder, watch the Ultimate Cut.
Yeah, give yourself an afternoon. Fuck it, if you listen to this, you've probably watched the Snyder cut of or Zack Snyder's Justice League. That's 4 hours, so just do yourself a favor.
Yeah, and there are parts that can be cut out, but it's called the Ultimate Cut for a reason.
Yeah. He actually likes the director's cut more. The ultimate cut was something that it was kind of forced on him, I think. And his director's cut, which is 240 something like that, is the one that he kind of prefers. But I couldn't find that anywhere. The DVD I've got is just the original, theatrical. But yeah, I mean, in whatever form you see it, it's well worth your time. There's a lot going on there. Give it a chance. Don't write it off just because it's Zack Snyder. I will agree with most people to say that Sucker Punch isn't a great picture. It looks really good, but there's some unusual themes going on there that are probably not great. Not blaming anybody for that. It's just there's some stuff in there that's probably mishandled, if anything else, and it's just a bit dull. And obvious and stuff. It's him trying to make an anime, and it doesn't really work. But yeah, check out Dawn of the Dead. Fucking rules. His first picture is so great. Just such a stylistic departure from what we were seeing at that time. And I dig his DC work, particularly Man of Steel. But come on, bring on Rebel Moon. Come on, Blood Axe. Let's fucking get this thing going. I don't know when it comes out, but shit, I'm on the edge of my seats.
Yeah, I think part 1 comes out sometime this year.
I certainly hope so. I'll put it in my diary and get ready for it. So that's it, folks. We're talking about Watchmen. We hope you go back and check it out and enjoy it. And if not, that's okay too. And if you don't agree with us, that's okay too. So before we go, though, before we bounce from this beautiful conclave that we do once every now and again, talking about some cool shit, do we have any questions?
We've got questions.
How many?
5 questions.
5 questions. 5 questions. These Johnny's theme song.
You know what's weird? It took YouTube one whole year to realize that we're using an actual song for our theme, and so now each episode of ours is almost copyrighted. Because
yeah, it's funny because Johnny's music is released by the record label that my company owns. It's ridiculous. He's totally fine with it. So fuck it, it doesn't matter. It just says copyright. Any proceeds go to the artist or whatever. Yeah. It's who cares? It doesn't matter.
We're not making money off of this shit anyway.
No, and Johnny knows that. Johnny knows we're not making any money. He was one of the guys I went to this show with the other night, and he was the one who came out and was like, that was a religious experience. He's such a fucking dude. I love that guy. Anyway, I was talking to him just quickly. I was talking to him. We were having dinner beforehand, and he came and sat down. He was a little bit later than everybody else, and I'm like, if you listen to the new episode, the episode that would have just dropped, there's the Dungeons and Dragons one hasn't dropped yet, but it will soon. But the one before that is our 1 year anniversary, when I spent a good 5 minutes blowing the man And I'm like, you got to check it out, man, because I suck you from fucking from tip to taint, mate. It's just he's excited.
It's just all in there, all of it.
Oh, mate, the whole thing, fucking balls and all. I thumb him in. Oh, Christ.
What'd you say?
I thumb them in. Like, that's just...
What?
Anyway, love you, Johnny. I thumb the balls in. That's what happens. Anyway, do you want to do some questions before I lose all of my mind?
Okay. So I just realized what thumb them in means. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
You got to do a bit of work, you know? These questions 5.
Yep.
Yep.
What do you think about the opening scene?
The credits.
I mean, the credits are after the murder, though. Let's talk about the scene of. Let's talk about both. Then.
Yeah, well, I mean, the opening scene of it starts with the whistling kettle and then it's the comedian's murder, is great. Like, it's such a brutal. It sets the tone really, really well. And then that kind of hyper violent, hyper fast reality of the moments, like that tracking shot where he gets thrown and the camera tracks with him as he goes over the couch. Like, what you're in for. So yeah, I dig it. I dig it a lot.
Yeah, and like, there's no way that all of that is real because there's a lot of wire work there, but it's so believable because of how it's shot.
Probably the glass in front of him is probably CG as well, and the lighting does a lot of work and all that stuff. But it's it's practical. It's 2 dudes in a room, and you can tell that's not Jeffrey Dean Morgan in 4K. It's just a dude with a mask on. But fuck, it's just like I said, it's a real. This is what you're in for, folks. So get ready.
Also, just like a huge shout out to Jeffrey Dean Morgan. He's my favorite, like Thomas Wayne. Both times, because he did that for the Flashpoint film, which was like the animated film.
Yeah,
which was insane.
Yeah, man. I still want to see that movie where he plays Thomas Wayne in the Flashpoint universe because he's totally capable. Yeah. Totally capable.
They talked about it, like the two, like Jeffrey Dean Morgan and the person who played Martha Wayne in that scene. They were in a film together again, and they talked about it. And he was totally on board with it. Like,
well, they were in Walking Dead together as well. Lauren Coburn, I think her name is. I can't remember exactly. Correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. But that's he's stand out in the whole picture. Like, to play such a horrible fucking character, but kind of be not redeemable, but at least sympathetic at the end, where he's like, he finds out the plan and is totally shook by it, even though he's a monster. Like, the idea of genocide. Just to keep the public in line. It's pretty remarkable performance. As far as the opening credits go, I think it's really clever. It's also not something that the studio wanted. They were like, what the fuck are we paying all this money for the opening credits for? That's ridiculous. But Zack's like, all right, don't worry about it then. And he told the screenwriter to take it out of the script. And he's like, I know what I want to shoot anyway. We'll just do it. And so he just organized that shoot on his own and captured one of the most interesting, again, tone-setting pieces, and tells you the whole story of everybody you need to know, is introduced and the relationships and, where they were then and where they are now, all within a few minutes, and using that great Bob Dylan song. Like, it's pretty remarkable.
That's the only Bob Dylan song I've heard, and it's my favorite. It's one of my favorite songs ever, and like,
it's pretty great.
Like,
pretty great song.
It fits so well with what Zack is showing. It fits so well with the time period because it was 80s.
Well, the song wasn't. The song would have come out in the 60s, but because it traverses the time periods. Yeah. But that shot of like the flower girl putting the flour in the barrel of the gun and then them all going off, like, it really is. It's not bleak because he made it bleak. It's bleak because it's an idea of what this time would have been if military states and governmental power were able to take over the hippie movement, and they didn't really, not in the end.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love it. So that's an answer to your question.
And like, just one more thing to add is that, like, after that whole because the song, like, the sequence is too long for the song, because the song isn't really that long. So they've
doubled it up.
Yeah, they doubled it up, and I love it. And
No problem with that.
and
No problem with
and
that.
right after the intro, we cut to the two night owls talking.
Mm.
It's such like a tone setter of like seeing the Minutemen then, and like them seeing like killed and taken away in like by hospitals, and like now it's just this one small group that they meet, just two people that like they meet annually.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
Yeah. The two last men standing kind of thing. Yeah,
and like
absolutely.
I love that Dan never loses it except when he finds out that the original Night Owl died, or like the one before him died.
Yeah.
And like Rorschach of all people like stops him and says, "Not in front of the civilians." I was like, "Oh my god!"
Yeah, where he crushes the glass in that guy's hand is fantastic. Yeah, such a good scene. Anyway, what's question number 2?
Question number 2: do you think Zack Snyder would come back to comic book movies again? I don't know.
We kind of just talked about it a little bit, about saying how maybe after he's done some leg stretching in his creator own stuff, he could come back. I don't think he'll do it haphazardly.
Yeah.
Not after everything he went through. But maybe it'd be interesting to see. You know what? Let's give it a rest for a little while. Give it 10 years and then see what happens.
Yeah, give it like 10, 15 years and let's see if James Gunn is able to do something.
Yeah. See what Gunn's got up his sleeve, and then maybe we'll go back to formula.
Yeah.
Question 3.
Question 3: what version do you love of the Watchmen? So, as in, like, not
What
like,
cut?
Yeah, what cut?
Okay. So what cut? Not one version, as in the book or the movie or the TV series.
Yeah, I mean, no, not that.
Yeah, of the cuts, I like the ultimate cut because I'm a completist, which is really annoying sometimes because like I'll buy a graphic novel set of stuff that I haven't read yet, but I've got to have them all.
Yeah.
It's just ridiculous. Like I just bought Denny O'Neill's run on The Question. It's 2 volumes, and I just bought volume 1 because I'm like, what if I don't like it? And it's the first time I've actually been able to do that to myself, as opposed to like where I bought all of Grant Morrison's Batman run, and the last 2 volumes are incomprehensible. Like they are just absolutely bananas. It's all this Batman International shit and stuff, and diverts from the original sort of big action blockbuster thing. And it's then like they're well written, but I don't like it as much. It doesn't aesthetically please me, and the art's not as good either. It's a little rushed to my eyes. So yeah, but yeah, I do like the ultimate cut. I enjoy the story, the Curse of the Black Freighter or whatever it is. In the middle there, it's gives some interesting tonal shift as you're kind of going through the piece.
Yeah, I mean, there's like the whole animated section where the kid reads the comic book. It's definitely something you cut out, but it's so artistically done.
Yeah, and it was released when the movie came out. It was released as a separate thing. It was a separate DVD and whatever. They've just cut it in for a new release, and that's cool. They're making their money, but I enjoy the totality of things. If I'm going to watch a fucking Close Encounters movie, I'm going to watch the 2 hour and 18-minute version because that's the one that Steven Spielberg worked hard on as a director. To give a director's cut. So
like when I'm going to watch a Lord of the Rings film, I'm not going to watch the theatrical one.
You're going to watch the theatrical cuts. What are you, a fucking savage? What are you, a goddamn backwards ass person? Of course not.
I do recommend, though, I know a lot of people give me shit on this, but I do recommend for someone who hasn't watched the Lord of the Rings movies, watch the theatrical one.
Start there, yeah. And then if you dig it, you can go back and refill your bowl with the other ones. So,
right? Like the bowl?
Yeah, like your bowl,
your
bowl of good Lord of the Rings cereal. You go back and go, can I have some more of that because it was fucking delicious? And you're like, ooh, there's a whole bunch of new shit in here I didn't know they had. There's hoops.
I heard something else.
Did you? No, bowl, as in cereal bowl, you goddamn pervert. What's number 4?
What top superheroes would you like to see get busy?
Fucking
in any universe.
Superheroes to get busy. I don't know if it's a really like Bucky and Winter Soldier probably, because I mean
that's the same.
It's
that's the same person.
Borderline the whole.
It's the same person.
What did I say? Yeah, I want to see him. I just want to see him jerk off. I just want to watch him jerk off.
You said
no, sorry, Cap and Bucky. Just because they were leaning that way anyway. Absolutely Harley and Poison Ivy.
Yeah, I mean, both of us for that.
Yeah. And, let's get weird. Let's get weird with it. Let's just say that giant squid monster from Watchmen and Ego, the Living Planet. Because he's a fuckhound anyway. How about you?
See, you've just widened my horizons up.
I've gone intergalactic with it. Intergalactic, planetary, intergalactic.
Oh, just two words repeated in different orders.
It's also lyrics to a Beastie Boys song.
Oh, okay. Did not know that.
Yeah, it's a good track. It's actually the song it's in the trailer for the Marvels.
Oh.
It's the Beastie Boys song, yeah. Intergalactic Planetary. Don't you ask me to smile. It's baller.
This was the weird part. Swamp Thing and Carnage.
Oh my god, there's tendrils going everywhere and goo, and there's fucking trees going up people and moss and fucking all sorts of botany. Yeah, okay, cool. I'm into that.
Yep. And I'm not going to elaborate.
If anybody could hear some weird noises, then it was me like acting out all the stuff, like the fingering of whatever you want. Heavens above.
How would you pitch an art house film with animals in it?
How would I pitch an art house film
with
animals in it? Well, I mean, if it was an art house film, I would have it be completely silent, and it would be like, it'd kind of be like EO, the film that I saw earlier in the year, which is a film that's almost entirely from the perspective of a donkey that starts out in a circus and then ends up sadly where he ends up. I won't ruin the movie because it really is a remarkable picture, but it would be entirely silent from the animal's perspective, and it would probably be about a bear.
About a bear?
I think it'd be about a bear. Yeah, I think it'd be interesting to see a bear go from I mean, they've done movies like that before, but to see a bear go from being a baby cub to a full-grown Kodiak or something like that. I mean, that'd be pretty amazing. And it pictures as an art house thing. It would be, it would be verite. It would be, you just see what happens. So not documentary, like there is a narrative built in, but the footage is shot verite. So it's just capturing these beautiful creatures in their natural environment without any sort of influence or human interaction with them to kind of fuck them up. Yeah, that would be my pitch, and I would call it Bare Bones.
Beat me to it.
Swish.
You beat me to it.
Swish. Awesome. Was that it?
That was it.
That's it, folks. We're done for another day. We hope you enjoyed it and come back next week as well, whenever we're doing whatever the fuck we're doing. We've discovered at this point in time we have no idea what we're doing beforehand, and we figure it out like a few days in advance. And I like that. I love the spontaneity of that. It's what it's all about. So yeah, thank you so much for listening again. As I say all the time, please comment, like, subscribe, all that annoying stuff that people tell you to do. Rate and review wherever you get us. We greatly appreciate it. And yeah, we'll be back next week with whatever the hell it is. Addie, you're a champion.
You're amazing.
You're amazing. A true love affair. A true internet love affair. And, we're going to go and fuck on a giant owl goddamn spaceship thing now. And Swamp Thing and Carnage are involved as well. It's going to be amazing. But no, I love you, buddy. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to talk Watchmen with me and all this guff.
Thank you for being here, man.
Pleasure. We'll see you next time, folks. And remember,
stay amazing and stay safe.